You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Feel like who art Ed?
We'll try to slice it.
Who art is Mr. Wood art Ed me?
Good. Either way, it's ambiguous. It works on so many levels.
I know.
That's off to a great start.
Welcome to Who Arted, weekly art history for all ages. I'm your host, Kyle Wood, and today I'm excited because I have another artist interview, and this is no shade to the other artists I've talked to. This is kind of my favorite because this is one of my oldest and dearest friends who is talking about an art form that I admittedly am super ignorant about. And so once again, welcome Sean Roschman. Thank you for coming on to talk about dance and all that modern esoteric stuff that just scares me.
You should be afraid. No, I'm kidding. Thank you so much for having me again, Kyle. It was a blast to be on last time, and I'm really excited to come back and talk some more about dance, my favorite topic.
Yes, and I know that you do love to talk about dance, but before we get to that, I want to start with your other favorite topic, you.
It really is my second favorite topic is me. Yeah, for sure.
I always think it's nice to get a little bit of background or biographical information. So, to start off, how did you become interested in dance?
Yeah, my parents took me to the Nutcracker when I was a kid, and I cried through the entire thing, from what they tell me. So my first sort of meeting with dance was not a positive one. Apparently, I was terrified of the whole endeavor. I'm still kind of terrified of ballet, but now for more specific, different reasons.
Oh, I was picturing you like cried, like you were so moved by it.
No,
but
I was terrified.
You were like
I was absolutely terrified.
How old were you at that time?
I think 4 or 5 or
Okay.
6, maybe 4 or 5. I would say 4 or 5.
Okay.
I have no recollection of it. My parents told me that I cried the entire time. But my mom loved an old Hollywood film called White Christmas. Do you know White Christmas at all? Yeah. Okay. So we would play that a lot, and it was a dance-heavy show, a dance-heavy movie, and I just saw, Vera Ellen and Danny Kaye, and was just fascinated by them moving so quickly and so expressively. And it was that kind of first time I was like, oh, that looks like something I want to do. And then very shortly after, my parents put me in theater. So I was in like theater camps and did musical theater. And that's where I started, my first ballet classes, my first tap classes, my first musical theater jazz kind of classes. And then in college, I decided that I was going to kind of make a go for it, and got into Tisch for ostensibly what was musical theater, and then pivoted kind of while I was at NYU to something more closely aligned to concert dance or modern dance or contemporary dance.
Okay, so see, this is where I'm trying to like track the sort of timeline of like what I know of you personally, because
we were in a musical together, you and me.
We were in high school. If you can call that a musical, I'm not entirely sure that all counted as actual theater. But I do remember like you and I were in some shows. I remember you back then. I had this impression of you being more of like a film and acting and wanting to be a director.
Yeah. That was kind of where I thought I was going to go.
But at that time you were also taking outside lessons in dance and performance and all of that. So then after high school, you went to NYU.
Mm-hmm.
So there you started off, you said, in musical theater.
Something that was kind of closely, the NYU system is a little cockamamie, where they kind of, at Tisch, they kind of shove you into it's a studio. So you're put in a certain track. And the track that I was put into encompassed a lot.
So you were So you were taking like jazz hands 101.
100%. I definitely took jazz hand 101 and then also took like stage design and then also took acting and then also took singing. And then it became very evident right away that I was not into singing, not into musical theater, not really a good actor, not really a good singer. But the dance had always clicked and it continued to click. And I found myself in a contemporary dance, my first kind of contemporary dance class. It was a Graham class. Remember last time we talked about
Martha Graham.
100%. So it was the first time I connected with what's kind of known as modern dance or the classic modern. And this teacher I had, her name was Deborah Damast, and she was beyond wonderful. Just one of the most inclusive, talented teachers. She's now, I believe, the head of the dance education program at NYU. And she had her own company too. But when I got into her class, that's the first, I was like, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Even if it's just for fun, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. It was her class that kind of cemented that in my brain.
So, I mean, we've kind of hinted at this. Obviously, we've talked about Martha Graham and any other sort of influences on you and your style and your development. I mean, it seems like a lot of modern.
I was introduced to contemporary ballet early in college. And one of the nice things about going to college in New York City was the whole city was also open to me. So I was able to take class at places like Broadway Dance Center, Steps on Broadway, Perry Dance. There was a place called Dance New Amsterdam that's no longer there, but I practically lived there for a year and just took as many classes as I could in different techniques. I took class at the Cunningham studio, the Lamone studio, anywhere there was a dance class. I was kind of in it, just to get. It was a buffet for me. It was like sampling. And when I found contemporary ballet, particularly the work of Crystal Pite, that kind of expressive contemporary postmodern ballet. That's when I was like, oh, it was just such a, when I found that and I saw that I remember seeing Crystal Pite's work for the first time and thinking, oh my God, where has this been all my life? And like weeping. I never cried in a musical or a film, but just, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
So then forgive me if I'm skipping around in the timeline too much.
Yeah, I'm skipping around too.
No, I'm just thinking about like, one of the other things that I know about you is you do some amazing stuff with aerial work. And, that's kind of a specialized thing. Is that something you picked up at NYU or did you pick that up outside of there? Like, how did you get into flying?
It's a bizarre kind of story. Yeah, flying. It's a bizarre story. But it was actually in Chicago that I was first introduced to flying. The summer of between my junior and senior year of college, I kind of had gotten the idea, all right, I want to be a dancer. Dance is what I want. And at that time I was getting the impression that I was going to want to be a choreographer. And I wanted to intern at a dance company and just kind of see what it was like and see what that professional world was. And I wrote an email to a company called Aerial Dance Chicago because they were close by, and I saw they had all this kind of cool trapeze stuff. And I spent the entire summer with them, and learned all about rigging and aerial apparatuses, and this was like 2004, maybe 2003, 2004. And also got to see what a small company was like. They're much bigger now, but it was, and I fell in love with the idea of a dance company, a community of artists coming together. It was just such a beautiful, lovely experience. And then when I got back to New York, it was a skill that so few people had at the time. I was able to kind of just skip a lot of lines in because at that time Ariel wasn't as prominent as it is now.
Mhm.
Cirque was in the water supply, but it wasn't. Cirque du Soleil wasn't a household name. Probably you probably knew about it from Vegas, maybe, or Orlando, but it wasn't. They didn't have movies, they didn't have as many touring shows, so Ariel wasn't in the consciousness as much
Yeah.
as it is now. So I had that kind of unique skill, and then when I got back to New York, that skill became very profitable because people love Ariel. And it's a spectacle, and people will pay good money for it.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because I mean, I there's a lot that I'm picking up on there that I think it bears repeating, but I love the fact that you just emailed a company and you're like, I'm into this,
Yeah.
you're into this. Can I just come hang out with you and learn everything you do?
Yeah.
And that they were so generous with their time and their expertise and taking you on and stuff like that. And
Yeah. No, it's proven to be something that I've been able to support myself from.
yeah,
If I'm being completely honest, Ariel pays the bills. And that's I'm lucky to have something more. I'm lucky to be a working artist with such a fun, creative day job.
yeah. And it's it's a cool one.
Yeah.
And you see, we've already kind of talked about like you've traveled all over the place doing this stuff, doing the aerials as well as you had your own dance company in New York. And then when we finally lured you back to Chicago, you started the company that we're here to talk about today. And I feel bad that we've gone this far without plugging Niko8. And the reason that I dragged you on is the same reason I did the episode on Cirque du Soleil last year, because I never want to miss an opportunity to talk about the awesome stuff you're doing. And you've got another show coming to the Ruth Page Center again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We're so excited. Yeah. It's going to be October 19th. The Ruth Page Center is just north of downtown Chicago. So if you know where the water tower place is, or if you've ever had, or ever gone to Navy Pier, it's not too far from there. It's a hop, skip, and jump off the Metro train if you're in the suburbs. One night only, the 19th of October at 7:30. And yeah, we're thrilled. We're really excited.
Yeah. And I got to say, last year, going to see Swarm, which was the show that you put on last year, I think I told you that was by far the best experience that I ever had watching a dance show. And
thank you.
As I'm saying that, I'm hoping that my sister's not listening because she's
a dancer, right? Isn't she a dancer?
She danced quite a bit, and I went to quite a few ballet performances and stuff like that. But there was something about your choreography in your show that was just so raw and visceral and expressive, and I found myself enjoying just the ride of the emotions.
That was
was
definitely my hope. So awesome. Yay. That makes me feel good. That makes me
And for listeners in the Chicago area, I would highly encourage you to check it out. Tickets, I'm going to put the links in the show notes, but after a short break, I do want to get into the show and the specifics of shows and just how you put that all together.
Oh, my favorite topic. Yay. Okay. Can't wait.
Before I do the cut to ads, I want to tell you about another great podcast for history lovers. It's called Calm History. If you want to learn about fascinating moments in history in the most relaxing way possible, try Calm History. Each episode is narrated in a calm voice to help you relax or even fall asleep. You'll learn about famous explorers, leaders, inventions, civilizations, and ancient wonders. Just search for Calm History on your favorite podcast player or tap the link in the show notes. Now I'm back with Sean Roschman, the creative director for Niko8, and I am hoping that you can explain a little bit about dance to me because I've been to dance my whole life. I've seen plenty of performances. I just don't get a lot of it, if I'm being honest. And the first question I have is just like, how did this show come about? And I don't mean like in that long-winded esoteric, like, well, I was walking down the street and I saw this thing that inspired me. I mean, like,
you don't want like a 3-hour conversation about my inner thoughts.
I want to get to that, but like literally, how do you tell people how they're supposed to move when you come up with a new dance? Like, is there a word for every single imaginable human movement? Or are you having to perform every part yourself? In which case, is that as funny looking as I imagine a one-man performance of an entire group show?
That's
like,
really funny.
How does this happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so there's first of all, I'm going to talk about how I do it with the caveat that everyone has them. Just like painting, there's a billion different ways. Jackson Pollock did it a different way than Monet, I assume. How I do it, okay, you would know better than me. How I approach choreography is, well, let's answer the first question. Does every movement have a name? It doesn't, but we use ballet as a, this is going to really date me and age me. Do you remember Esperanto at all?
I know of it. I never spoke it, but
it was like the universal language.
Yeah. For those who aren't familiar, it was in like the mid 20th century. They tried to come up with a universal language that took parts of all different languages and just mashed them together. And I think William Shatner made a movie in Esperanto.
Did he really? Oh my God, I gotta
believe
check that out. Oh, I gotta check that out. That sounds fascinating. So Esperanto, yeah, basically it was meant to be like a universal language that everyone would speak and would be easy to learn, and then it would, it would cross geographic boundaries. To a degree, I think ballet is a bit like that. Now, I would have friends that would argue that's not necessarily the best thing in the world because ballet has been problematic in the past and continues to be problematic. But for my case, we use ballet as a base, and then I try to then use my own physicality to take those ballet steps and merge them, mix them, rearrange them. And I usually work off physical impulse. So yeah, I'm doing the moves a lot, but as I get older and the dancers get younger, my ability to do what they do is becoming less and less and less. So I've changed my approach to now I work more from the dancer outside as opposed to me imposing the exact steps that I want, which I still do from time to time. I always come in with a plan. I have steps prepared, but then I put them on the dancer. I step back, see how it looks, and then change as necessary. So it's more like sculpting than anything else. I'll slap some choreography that I've created by myself on dancers, and then I watch it, see how they interpret it, see what they do with it, play with music, see how it adds to the entire piece, if it's doing what I want it to do psychologically, if it's doing what I want it to do narratively, and then I start sculpting. So it feels like a sculpture more than like a book that I'm writing.
Interesting. It sounds almost like a little bit of like a collaborative process with the dancers.
Very so. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Which is it's kind of cool that you empower them a little bit to put some steps in.
Yeah, and I think it's always going to be. I try not to take advantage of them, by which I mean I try not to just say, okay, I need steps, and just give them nothing and just have them come up with stuff and then slap my name on it. I try to give them a baseline, like if it's a leg sweep, do a leg sweep and then say, well, maybe the torso needs to shift as you're doing a leg sweep because I want it to be delicate and soft. And then I'll see it and I'll say, oh, that's a little too delicate. Maybe if you bend your knees really deeply and you dig this is just made up, a big foot, it comes across more aggressive. I'll watch that and I'll say, okay, well, that does a very interesting thing. And now I'm seeing it's taking you off center. Let's play with that off center. Is there something? So it's just, you add layers to it. And I have dancers who are deeply, deeply talented. And they can take that information, put it in their kind of computer brain, their dancer computer, and it comes out something beautiful and fantastic. And I'm very lucky to have dancers who are as giving as the dancers I have, and who can just get that information and play with it and collaborate, like you said.
And that's interesting to hear you talk about the way that you revise a piece or, build off of the movements. What I'm noticing is as you talk about it, you're addressing like the expressive quality that's conveyed through a certain movement. And I mean, to me, that makes perfect sense and explains the reaction that I had to last year's show. But it also brings up the question, like, is that the way that you're framing things? Like, is that the lens through which you're looking at it? Are you trying to communicate ideas and messages? Is it more a visceral response that you're going for? Like, if an audience comes to see a Niko8 performance, what should they be looking for in that work?
So that's a great question. Many people use many different methods and forms to make dance for a specific reason. Some people are really interested in the form of dance and just dance for dance's sake, the shapes, the lines, and kind of detach a need to put a narrative or an emotion to it. In the way abstract painters don't want to paint a landscape. They want to give the form and have the form speak for itself. I, on the other hand, don't really find that way as satisfying as when I try to tackle either a strong emotion or a question or something burning inside me, not to get too up my own behind, but like something that I feel passionate about, and then using a dance as a way of exploring that. So I like to think of it's almost like an all-you-can-eat buffet or a hot tub. Just get in it. If it's not for you, get out or pass. But it's supposed to be immersive. You're supposed to be immersed in it. You're supposed to see something, have a physical, emotional reaction, whatever that might be. I'm here for it and want to know about it. I'm guiding the piece through a semi-narrative. I have a narrative in my head, but it's usually something that's more dream logic than like a book that I'm writing with a plot, with a beginning, middle, and end. It feels more like a dream, but I'm always chasing a visceral, emotional experience that I'm trying to show and scope, kind of landscape through dance.
And I think that makes sense to me. And I appreciate your explanation there. And I appreciate it so much that I resisted the urge to jump on the fact that you talked about a buffet and a hot tub together.
So gross.
I did not say anything about having a buffet in a hot tub or going to your performance in hot tub attire.
You can't.
There were so many ways I could go with that, but I let you finish. I let you land that one before I interjected my ridiculous sophomoric comment.
No, I think that's very funny because also I feel like you shouldn't get into a hot tub after a buffet. I think you're just asking for so it's one or the other. Because I feel it's just a little too decadent. But although it might be nice to have, I don't know, some lobster and some crab legs. I would like that. I don't know.
Now,
sorry.
if we could try to get a little bit serious here, though.
Sure, very serious.
I do want to ask. We've talked generally about the framing, but you've got a specific show coming up. What were the ideas, the inspirations behind this one?
But this one is a little different than Swarm. So Swarm was a 50-minute piece that just ran straight through, which was exciting and thrilling. And whenever I have an evening length, It's you're able to really dive into specific details and explore an idea. But this season, I also wanted to kind of part of the mission of Niko8 is to be an incubator. So I opened up the process to all the dancers and said, if you want to make work, I'll produce it, and use the company members, and we have our own space, which our own rehearsal space, and I wanted to get some of their voices in the mix. So there are 4 company members making, 5 company members making work that you'll see. And then there's also, I'm making a 15-minute piece called Remains that's using Polish folk music that has been intermixed with some modern elements like ska and reggae and punk rock.
You had me at ska.
I knew I would. Who doesn't like Polish folk ska? It sounds weird, but trust me, they're called the Warsaw Village Band, and it is some crazy, beautiful music.
I actually love that. I love that. Feels very perfect coming from
you. It does, doesn't it? Yeah. The music I had found decades ago. It first came out in like 1998 with the fall of communism. They've been together, I think now since then, but we're using music from their first album when the Iron Curtain had just kind of fallen. And it's otherworldly. It's like, I've never heard music sound like this. It's haunting and gorgeous and aggressive and painful and all those sort of things that are so rich for dance. And then, it's going to be a piece that also utilizes some Polish spoken word to kind of make some transitions. And we got a strong Polish community here in Chicago. So I'm hoping that if you are interested in Polish music, amongst other things, definitely come out.
But also, I love the thing that at first glance on its face sounds a little bit absurd with the Polish folk ska, and then as you just get into it the slightest bit, like there's so much depth and seriousness to this that I like. The name of my show is a fart joke, but I also have a little bit of seriousness to it. And, I think there's something about taking those seemingly frivolous things seriously and giving them the weight that they deserve as pieces of culture to be explored. I do want to ask you also, though, because I love this idea that you're opening it up for your dancers to put their work out there. Because one of the episodes that's going to be very recent, recently published before this one comes out, is an episode on Gaga and the ballerinas, and I talked a little bit about the problematic history there. But I love that you're giving people the chance to put their own pieces on. Is that typical in a dance company? Is that a common thing that like the dancers get to start putting pieces in the shows, or like is that you got to work your way up to it?
Yeah, I mean, if they were smart, it would be typical, and that's because dance doesn't have a great shelf life. You know what I mean? It doesn't stick around long. If you're great, like Balanchine and Graham, it'll stick around longer, but it doesn't age well. But what dance does do well is bring communities together, collectives together. And the next generation, the generation below me, the kids coming up these days, they're going to have their own thoughts and their own voices and their own way of dancing and moving. And I don't want Niko8 ever to become a museum. I want it always to be alive and active. And the only way to really do that is to empower the children, as I call them, the kids, in making their own work. It doesn't really matter if it's good or bad, in my opinion. It's for them to explore, and dance is so expensive and so sometimes cost prohibitive. I want them to be able to make artistic risks without having to worry about wasting, their own self-producing money. But it also it serves the mission of Niko8 being an incubator, that we're here to serve the dance community as a whole, not just by my one idea. And that was an important part of why I kind of rebranded the company. Back in the day, it was called Roschman Dance, which was my last name. And the company, for the most part, just did choreography by me. And that's just how it was done when I was starting as a choreographer. You had a single source choreographer, Graham, Lamone, Parsons. It was one choreographer's idea, and that was it. And then as dance has evolved, what we're seeing is that has a shelf life, and that has some pitfalls to it. So if you want to make an organization that's sustainable and that can grow with the community and grow with the time, you kind of have to build in a resource for the younger generation to get their voice out and get it out in the main stage of your show.
I love that. And I love the courage that you have and the generosity to put, other people's stuff out there. I mean, it's a risk to give other people voice, to give up that bit of control. And I think that's so cool. And that's why you're one of the friends that I am proud to know and never tire of bragging about, because you're doing some awesome stuff. And
thank you, Kyle.
So
are you.
I feel better for knowing you.
Okay.
But just to wrap up the episode, because whenever I do have an artist on, I like to end by just asking for, what advice would you give to younger people coming up? I mean, you've kind of hinted at some of this already, but what advice would you give to people interested in dance, whether as performers or, advice for people who want to come and enjoy a modern dance show, but feel intimidated by the esoteric performances and stuff like that?
Sure. So I'll address those audience members. You should definitely come out. You should not be intimidated by dance. Remember that dance is like music. If you maybe saw a dance performance and it wasn't for you back, you might have just listened to the wrong style of music. If all you heard was country music and you're a classic music fan, you would have never known. You know what I mean? The dance encompasses so much. There's room for everyone. There's room for all ideas. And if you don't like the dance, it might be that the dance is bad or it didn't connect with you. And if that's the case, you don't need to feel bad about that. It didn't connect. Plenty of dances don't connect with me, where I love dance. I'm a huge I see as much dance as possible, but I don't like all of it, and not all of it moves me or it connects with me. And
you can say it. You don't like my lawnmower and sprinkler.
Your lawnmower and sprinkler dance do need. I do have some notes, some critiques, if you will. But you're also kind of hard to give notes to. Notorious. No kidding.
I just think if you're going to do the lawnmower, you need to go all out and let the lawnmower break down, go around, kick it a couple of times, then start it back up again.
You're very maximalist.
You can't go part way on this, okay?
That's fair. Listen, I have not been known to be a minimalist, so I go for it. Is what I say. Go hard in the paint, as the basketball kids say. Basketball kids. As for the if you want a career in this, good luck. But in all honesty, it's a beautiful, wonderful. It gives so much back to you to make a living in dance. Just know that there is no one way to make a living doing this. You have to be, I hate this word, but you have to be incredibly resilient. and you have to be able to take kind of the destiny into your own hands. Meaning, if you're auditioning, you're not getting what you want out of that, you either have to have the courage to say, great that I'm doing my own thing, or I want to do that, so I better get better. It's beyond the obvious, which is take class, be in a place where dance happens. It's hard to talk about creativity without sounding, I don't know, glib. But it is so true that your unique voice is what people pay money for. At the end of the day, there's 1,000 people with 1,000 voices, and people want to hear a unique one. And I think sometimes when I was younger, I shied away from being a little different, or not moving the way that most people moved, or not constructing dances the way that my colleagues and peers did it. But at the end of the day, the uniqueness of how you make a piece, or how your point of view, your lived experience, your emotional truth, whatever that might be, is far more interesting than like a bad version of someone else's work, or your idea of someone else's work. So fearlessness, I was not great at it in the beginning. A lot of my early stuff looked like bad versions of other people's work. But I'm trying harder to be kind of closer to how I authentically move and see the world.
I think that is wonderful advice. I would, sign on to all of that. Your ideas intrigue me, and I wish to subscribe to your newsletter.
Finally, you're the only one. Got up to 2, you and my mom.
But I would also add, learn how to make people fly, because apparently that will take you all over the world.
That's also true. Get really good at one very, very, very specific thing, and you're set. You're set for life. Thanks, ZFX.
Yeah. But thank you, Sean Roschman, creative director of Niko8. And again, the show is going on October 19th at the Ruth Page Center in Chicago. It is 7:30 p.m. and tickets can be found at Niko8.com, or the links I'll put in the show notes. Thank you so much once again.
Yes. I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I plug just my other dancers? Because they're going to be making work too. And just their names.
100%. I love the fact that as I'm talking about you, you're sitting there thinking, no, these dancers need the attention. That's what makes you such a cool person. Yes, by all means. Who do you want to shout out?
Yes, there's going to be a piece by my rehearsal director, Hannah DiLorenzo. She's collaborating with Anouk Atsi. There's a work by Yana Kalavoda. Oh, Yana, if I get that name wrong, I'm so sorry. I only call them by their first name. Sarah Sterling is making a piece. And there's going to be a beautiful duet by Katie, who she Armbrecht. She made that duet with her identical twin sister. It's so cool. And they're all 4 of those pieces. I've seen them. There's not a bad piece in the mix. They're all beautiful and different and really exciting. I hope everyone gets to see.
Well, I will definitely be there, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you so much.
This concludes this week's episode of Who Arted, part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. If you found this tolerable, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app. You can find images of the work being discussed this week and every week on social media at Who Arted Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course on the website whoartedpodcast.com. Podcast done.